Hi, this is Aaron Marshall with Ratio Christi here at UNC Wilmington. Today we're going to look at the idea of worldviews, and I want to make the claim that atheists are borrowing from Christian worldviews in order to live in reality. Now, first off, what is a worldview? A worldview is just simply the way in which you see the world. Who has a worldview? Everyone has a worldview. Everyone has a way in which they see the world. In fact, if you were to say, I don't have a worldview, guess what? That's your worldview. The point is, the worldview that we are looking for, the worldview that we think is true, is the worldview that is going to best be able to explain all of reality. Now, we at Ratio Christi here at UNCW think that Christianity is that worldview. We think that Christianity best explains all of reality. Atheists obviously disagree. But some atheists will say, see, I'm an atheist and I believe certain things. I don't need Christianity in order to believe those things, therefore atheism is true. But what I want to challenge you, the viewer here today, and anybody who's thinking through this, is that just because you can recognize certain things are true doesn't mean your worldview accounts for them. In fact, what I would argue is that every other worldview, except for Christianity, is going to borrow from Christianity, certainly from theism, to make sense of reality. Now, there's a guy named Frank Turek who's written a couple of good books that we use all throughout our Ratio Christi discussions. But one of those books is called Stealing from God. And in that book, he makes the argument that atheists are stealing from God on specific areas that he uses the acronym CRIMES to explain. The idea is that the crime is they're stealing from God to try to borrow those things from a Christian or at least a theistic worldview. And I want to just walk you through those briefly, but obviously if you're more interested in going deeper in this, get the book Stealing from God by Frank Turek. Now, what he says is that in these 6 things, atheists are stealing from God because you cannot make sense of these things in an atheistic world. And what are those things? They're causality, reason, information and intentionality, morality, evil, and science. So let me just briefly walk you through why he says these things are the atheists are borrowing from God. Causality, he's saying the fact that certain things are causing other things to happen, we would say needs a first cause, and that would be God. Again, he would flesh this out more in the book. But the ultimate cause of everything has to be God, an uncaused cause. Second, reason. What makes sense of the fact that I can reason through these things? We would say only God makes sense of that. Information. You are essentially an information machine. Your DNA is made up of information, only much more complex than any other information system out there. And where does information come from? It comes from a mind. We would say it comes from God. How does an atheist account for the information inside of themselves apart from God? Morality, we would say you need God in order to understand that there are right and wrong. In order to me to say certain things are evil or certain things are wrong, I have to know what's right, and there has to be some kind of standard, some eternal standard by which I can compare things to. We call that God. In fact, we've done other videos fleshing that point out. Second to last, evil. Many people say evil is one of the best arguments against God. I would say to you, evil is one of the best arguments for God, because again, like we just said, in order for me to say that certain things are evil, there has to be certain things that are right that I'm comparing it to, and that standard must be outside of us, and comparing it to a standard that's always existed, that's eternal. And so we would say you need God in order to be able to say that certain things are evil. And this, in fact, is one of the main arguments that ended up bringing C.S. Lewis to Christianity, was his argument as an atheist of all the evil and suffering in the world. But then he said, wait a minute, if I deny God's existence, then where do I come up with this idea of evil and suffering? So then he ended up recognizing that God does exist. And then finally, we would even say you need God to do science. Why should I trust that there's going to be this consistent causality when I pour certain chemicals into beakers, that it's always going to react the same way? Why should I expect that to be consistent? Why should I expect that to be orderly? We'd say because we live in a theistic world in which God does exist. But on an atheistic world, you shouldn't expect things to be that way. You just have to assume that they are. Now, we would say the reason why all these things are true is because Christianity is true, ultimately because theism is true, and then we know that Christianity is true because of the truth claims in the Bible, most importantly, the resurrection. But as an atheist, what we're saying is you have to be able to make sense of reality within your own worldview, and we just don't think that that is possible. So think about that. Continue to ask good questions, but also seek good answers, because we're convinced that if you seek those good answers, you'll find them only in Christianity. This is Aaron Marshall with Ratio Christi here at UNC Wilmington.